Hold on one moment. All right, we're ready.
Okay, we will call to order this meeting of the Port of Hood River Commission. Are there any modifications to this agenda from staff?
President Shepherd, there's one modification to our only action item tonight, action item A, related to the NISPERS toll waiver policy. It's simply a typo in the last sentence in the body of the acknowledgement. It shall not be subject to toll is repeated twice, and so that one should be removed.
Okay.
And then second, we received a letter today from Brad Pickering representing Mount Adams Fruit. Brad is with us tonight, and he may be interested in testifying to the commission in public session. But you should all have received the letter that Brad provided this afternoon. That's it from staff.
Were there any changes from commissioners? I didn't get any emails. Was there anything last minute you noticed? Okay.
No, I do have a question when we get to informational reports on item B. Real quick question.
You bet. I'll make sure you ask them. Okay. Public comment. Susie, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and take yourself off mute, and we can happy to listen to what you have to say.
Great, there I am. Hi. So I sent a letter to kind of outline some concerns about what the needs for the sandbar will be in the summer, and hopefully we can have a conversation about that. But I'm gonna move ahead in my life, and I'm moving out of the sandbar. And I do have some people that will be amazing tenants for you. They have that infrastructure to back up what the sandbar needs, because the sandbar has like an amazing amount of volume, and it needs to have a backup resource for refrigeration and so many things. But I think they're going to be wonderful tenants for you, but they need a lease to amortize the cost of the business. And the business is based on the financials. It's based on what I've created down there. And so I don't know. I don't know where you're going with the year-to-year concept that's in the new lease. I don't know if you want a lot of turnover down there, but I think that would be really not good for the venue. I think that it's too busy. It's not a normal food truck operation down there. The volume is so much more than you can even imagine. And I would hope that maybe you would like look at the history that I have over the 9 years that I've been down there. But I'm offering a packet and like a whole year of my time turning over the venue to the new owners or the new people down there. And you know, of course I want to sell a business that I've owned, operated, and grown over a 9-year period. And people won't buy it unless there's the opportunity of amortizing the expense over a period of 3 to 4 years. So I thought I had a 5-year lease. I was hoping to sell it with 4 years and me operating with them for a year and them amortizing over that period so that it was doable, so they could actually make money and pay for the business at the same time. And, you know, what's going forward is, you know, the shade apparatus, the carpeting. I mean, there's so much that goes with that venue. It's not a normal venue. I know that we have to change out the tiki hut, and there's a whole array of new things that we need to do down there. But I'm offering up my expertise and my ability to like pass it forward instead of just a dump and run like has been happening with the other trailer. That's just not what I'm doing. So I guess I've seen other people sell their location and with leases intact, and my hope was to have that consideration as well. And you know, I've been a port leaser for many years. I go back to 1991 with Northwave, and I've always been a really good tenant. And I would just like you to consider, you know, that for me, it's a retirement too. It's like, you know, self-owned, operated business with blood, sweat, and tears. And yeah, I've got these great kids, the Ewald sisters. They've worked there, they know it intimately. They're involved with the Evoke Winery, so they have refrigeration, they have storage, they have everything this venue could ever need. And I think they'd be an amazing long-term tenant for you. And I just, when I hear that you want to go year to year down there, I think you're just opening up a huge can of worms. And I think people would be so sad to see the venue go in that direction. It's just, it's an icon. I mean, I know that some of you have been down there, and I just think it's worthy of people that care, people that will actually really put their whole heart into it. So
Thank you,
that's
Susie.
all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your time. If the commission has any questions or needs any follow-up information, we'll definitely reach out through Daryl. And she'll be your contact, but we appreciate your time, and you were definitely heard.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brad, you on here? Thanks for joining us. Brad, was there anything you wanted to chat about in addition to your letter at this time?
No, Ben, I just appreciate the port's efforts on this, and the ongoing work on the bridge, and really appreciate the port and Michael scheduling any testing and maintenance around our harvest season.
Well, thank you for writing that letter. And I know staff's doing everything they can on that weight rating right now. So
Thank you.
Can I ask one follow-up question for Brad, if it's okay?
of course, go ahead.
I know that Paul Aubert sent you some information about a letter for congressional ask that Kevin Greenwood sent out, and I was just curious. I just wanted to see if that's something that you would be willing to do in support of the bridge.
Yes.
You don't have to answer now at all or anything.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm you know, I can't speak for upper management, but I'm absolutely sure we would be.
Okay, that's perfect. So if you could just follow up with Kevin, that would be great. I know Paul specifically wanted to reach out to you guys, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. And Christy,
Thanks,
if
Brad.
I find it, I'll double check with Michael.
All right, we can move on to the consent agenda. If there is a motion to approve.
President Shepherd, this is Commissioner Strike. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
Is there a
Mr.
second?
Fox, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Strike, aye.
Fox, aye.
I think I heard Chapman. Shepherd, aye. Okay, consent agenda will pass. Informational reports on item B. Commissioner Fox, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if we had an updated estimate of what this was going to cost. The last I remember, it was 1.6 million, but I think that was quite a while back.
Commissioner Fox, I spoke with Paul Bandlau just hours before the meeting today. And his investigation, they're still very comfortable with that estimate at this time.
Okay, so that'll get everything. That'll get the procurement of the cables and the installation of it.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Michael, I know Mark is on the call, so why don't we move right ahead to the load limit engineering report?
Yeah, you bet. Well, you all know Mark. He's been before you before talking about the bridge, our bridge engineer. This is something that Mark's been on top of and we've been working on for quite a while, of course. I apologize for the amount of information in the packet. We included the entire test results just to make sure the commission knew and could dig into the details and understood what about $220,000 would buy. Pretty impressive work they did out there. Mark's looked at their data results. He's asked questions of the testing engineer, and he's done his own analysis, and he's here to present his findings to you tonight. So Mark, it's yours.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Thank you, commissioners. So yeah, the upfront portion of our memo is pretty short and brief. The BDI report is quite detailed and lengthy, about 100 pages or so, but very good information contained in there if you're interested in digging into that. Very high level, the main takeaways are there's two primary areas that we need to address to get the loads back to what they were pre this new restriction. And that involves the Oregon approach spans. And then there's one joint in span 3, the L4 gusset plates. Those actually got worse from BDI's analysis over ODOT's. And so those there, we can get, without addressing that gusset plate, about halfway back between the new load restriction and the prior load restriction. So with the Oregon approach spans only, and you can see table 1 on page 5 shows those projected load restrictions.
Hey, Mark. Mark, can I interrupt and just ask, would you like your memo to be on the screen for the commissioners to see your findings or anything?
If anybody wants to look at that, about the only thing probably really look at would be the table, or if anybody wanted to see the exhibit as like where we're talking about.
Yeah, I'd like to see the table.
Okay, so page 5 of the memo. So this table is showing the what unrestricted weight is there in the second column, and the what new posted weight limit is currently from this letter from ODOT there in the middle. The blue columns on the right, so then the potential revised posted limit. This assumes that the Oregon approach plans are addressed. There's no getting away from that. So then you'll see in the far right column, it's that span 3 gusset plate L4 is the control for all of those that are lower than the restricted. 36 tons instead of 40 tons for that.
So Mark, let me interrupt you. So the way I read this table on that particular one, we could raise the load limit back up on a type 3.3 to 36 tons if we change out that gusset plate on span 3 L4. Is that correct?
No, that's without changing out the gusset plate. If we fix the gusset plate, we'll be back to 40.
Okay.
So this is, we still have to address the Oregon span, but these are the limits controlled by span 3 gusset plate. Now, this is all contingent. This is our findings out of the load tested and field verified analysis. ODOT still has to approve this. And so our recommendation is that we send this memo, the full report, to ODOT. We also send them the 1996 plans that we found along the way during this project for the widening of the Washington approach spans. They did not have that information when they did their load rating. And so they need that information. And so we would send that as well. Then I would want to request to set up a meeting with them within a couple of weeks to then discuss, so we can kind of get them, have the conversation about what do they need to move forward. There's a couple of different ways they might want to go. There's the potential of getting them to agree to these higher posted limits if we address the Oregon approach spans prior to doing the guts at place. I'm not sure the likelihood of that. They may not want to agree to anything until they've fully vetted it. So that's a little bit depending on what's their position and how hard the port might want to push them on things. So we need to have that conversation. There's a variety of issues since ODOT hired another consultant to do the load rating. ODOT's essentially the owner of that load rating, of which they issued these new load restrictions. Do they go back to that consultant to redo it, incorporating information out of the field tests? And then what do they need? Because it's different analysis. The analysis that BDI did is different programs and software because they work integrally between their field collected data and their finite element models. And so there may have to be some extraction of like distribution factors that ODOT could use in the programs that they use. That's the conversation we need to have in that meeting that I want to have after they've had a chance to review the report.
So
Find out.
Mark,
Yes,
let me
sir.
interrupt you again. If I remember right, we had a discussion before we released this to go do the load study. If I remember right, I asked the question, have you guys met with ODOT and explained what you were going to do? And did they give you the nod up and down that they could use this information that you're capturing?
Yes, we did. But the difference is between general information approach and specific results. So we sent them the load test plan that BDI had prepared and said, this is how we're planning to approach it. We sent them our prior memos. Basically asked if they had any particular criteria that needed to be met. And they said, just follow the MBE. The MBE is the AASHTO manual for bridge evaluation. And that's the guide generally for load ratings and inspection. So we got what we could aside of having specific tangible results. Now we need them to look at that and determine.
Yeah, that's to me, that's not a problem. And I expected that. I would just be very surprised if they come back to you and say something like, hey, we disagree with the methodology and the points that you selected and your analysis, because I would have thought that would have been worked out up front, that yeah, they will accept the methodology. They got to look at their own results, but they accept the points in the methodology. So I'd be a little surprised if they come back and now we change our mind.
I would too. So we're addressing specific, we're not addressing every deficient area on the bridge because the cost of instrumenting and testing all of those things would have been 2 or more times what it was as it is. Most of it's transferable across the other trusses. So this still assumes, I want to make clear too, like generally on most all these things, I'm just assuming we're going to allow the EV3 truck to be restricted. It's a bridge buster, very heavy, short compact truck. That's not, I don't believe, your client base. And so the cost of addressing that truck, that goes all over. If Michael or whoever's controlling the screen, if you want to scroll down to the first attachment, which is the exhibit.
Hey, Mark,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, before you do that, can you go back to that same chart for a moment? Genevieve? The one we were just on. So, Mark, I just want to make sure this is really clear to the commission. This implies that the potential revised limit would be 36 tons, not 40 ton. Is that in fact what you're saying here? Or are you saying that we can get the limit back up to 40 with these 2 points of intervention that you've identified?
Yeah. This limit here is controlled by the span 3 gusset plate. If we fix that and bring it up to strength, then that 36 tons will go back to 40 or above.
I see. So you're saying the new posted weight limit was, now since that was a tabletop exercise, this is with actual live load testing, that the potential revised post limit is what we would argue is in place now.
Right.
And
And
so
the reason I did that was just to show that distinction in that, you know, if you don't do the repair of that gusset plate, you get these values. Assumes the Oregon approach spans retrofit is done.
And so if we address the controlling factors, that approximate ballpark would be 150,000 or so, that could then restore the 40 ton limit except for EV3s. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now there are, if you pull down to the next table, it's a little harder to look at in the column here, stuff in the gray to the left. This is what we had in our prior memo. This is what basically came out of from the ODOTs. And the blue column is the new result. So you can anywhere where it's below 0.95 is going to be an EV truck. Some SU7, so but that's gusset plate L4. So that you see all those controls. The other one, so if it's bold, it basically needs to be addressed. And these are effectively the L4 gusset plate. Everything else, you see there on the Oregon approach span, we were down to a 0.92 or 0.31 for negative moment. If we address it in red, we get back up to rating factor of 1 above 1. So that one, that 0.3 is too low to tolerate.
Mark, we're losing your audio a little bit, but I think we got most of that.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so basically those 2 primary things. There are a couple of rating factors that could be close to the line that if ODOT, and do you get back to Commissioner Fox's question, is if ODOT says, okay, we're going to take this information, but we're going to run it through our analysis method, which might come out with slightly different numbers because you're not going to run 2 models and get exactly the same results. And so there's a possibility that there could be some locations that are still on the line. So I think it's relatively low likelihood, but we can't guarantee it. And so I need to know what path forward do they want to go on from incorporating this analysis into theirs.
Mark, would ODOT use their own engineers to do that, redo the analysis, or would they turn back to, I think David Evans was the one that did the.
They hired DEA to do it originally. My guess is that they would go back to them since they have all the files to do it, which could take some time because they would have to get under contract again for them to do the updates. All those files are turned over to ODOT, so they could do it internally. That then becomes a matter of staffing and resources, whether internal or external.
And what do you surmise the turnaround time would be, just roughly? Are you talking a better part of a year or a few months?
It's tough. Their contracting can be quite slow, and it depends on whether or not they still have an active on-call for that type of work that could be used. Then they could just issue a task order. If they had to put it out through to solicit bids or, more competitive type. So I doubt they would do that, but I'm not sure. It depends a little bit on the dollar amount and existing contracts.
Thank you.
So Genevieve, yeah, there you go. You could fit that on. So this is the blood and guts exhibit, sort of. So all the red boxes are what came out of ODOT's initial load rating from their initial load restriction letter. But they then told us that, oh, by the way, we're going to be addressing the EV trucks, these emergency vehicle trucks, in the fall. And Michael, I believe you got that letter maybe December, where they notified you of, now we're applying load restrictions for these EV trucks as well. So the blue items are all added, and they're all a result of this EV3 truck. So it's the bridge buster type of truck. And so EV2 almost never controlled on anything. It's just not as heavy. And so anyway, that's kind of where it's really probably not financially in your interest to address those, but to get your K3 truck and even some of their SU trucks that would basically addressing the red. So of the red, what we're talking about addressing, if you look up there in span 3, you see there were 3 gusset plate joints affected in span 3. It's only that first one that's still an issue. That's the L4 joint. And then the Oregon approach bands. The issue we've got at the Oregon approach bands is we have very different results between ODOT and BDI. And I've asked one of my engineers to look into ODOT or DEA's original analysis on that, to get into the brass files. The difference is negative moment is controlling. This is a continuous span, so negative moment is the bending about the bent deep here. So top flange is in tension, bottom flange is in compression, and in compression, lateral buckling will control it, because we only have a mid-span diaphragm span. So kind of a long length to be unbraced. And so lateral buckling stresses add to it. And That's what's tanking it. Adding a quarter point diaphragm on those spans takes care of it. So
Mark?
BDI, yes, sir.
I would suggest, this is really interesting. The work you've done is really detailed. But I think for purposes of the commission meeting right now, can we just look ahead a little bit? The commission will have to make a decision about investing in the bridge to overcome these deficiencies, assuming that ODOT corroborates the findings. If we were to do that, and I wish Brad were part of that conversation, but we'll reach out to Brad and others. It doesn't look like this is, if ODOT corroborates your findings, that this is not a significant investment, at least not the significance of the investment that we had thought might be the case. And so if one were to say, if the commission were to say, yeah, let's retrofit, let's work ahead on the fixes. I assume that there's some specific plans and specs that would need to be prepared. You need to define the work, and then we would need to seek a contractor to do that. Setting aside the ODOT approval and assuming that at some point soon if the commission would decide, yeah, let's go ahead, how long would it take you to prepare the plans and specs that we could have for bidding about?
It go pretty quickly. The organ approach bands is very simple. We would have to do some analysis, but it's a pretty simple detail.
Every third or fourth word, I'm sorry, is that this connection's very difficult to hear.
Apologize for that. The organ approach band details would be very simple to address. The gusset plate is a splice in the bottom core truss. Would take a little more analysis, but I would say we could be doing it in a 3 to 6 month time frame.
And then, so that would be each of the points of intervention. You could do the appropriate prepare the plans, and then presumably, possibly we could do this under emergency authorization under statute. But regardless, given that time frame, ODOT's approval, it would seem like if the commission decided to move ahead on this, we would be looking at mid-fall to late fall to actually do the work. So it would be after the harvest season, which has some impact. But is that a rough time frame that makes sense if the commission were to authorize moving ahead?
Yeah, I think we could be targeting that, and if we needed to expedite, if we can. I think we want to kind of make sure that we got some level of concurrence from ODOT to make sure that that work is going to result in what we say it's going to result in.
Right.
But that could be happening in that same time frame, I believe.
You know, Mark, one of the questions that I would have, by increasing the load on the bridge, and we're rolling heavier stock across the bridge, what extra wear are we anticipating to get on the welding requirements for the grading? And what's the next thing that's going to hit us?
Well, John can weigh in on that, because I believe he said that you're getting a lot fewer cracks in the grid deck under this restricted load.
Well, I think actually it's a combination of things. It's a combination of a very diligent, about 7 years now of huge effort towards deck welding, and an 8-point weld that's working, plus the reduced loads. We are seeing far less deck damage at this time, far less.
Yeah. But otherwise, Commissioner Fox, it would be, putting it back to the loads that you had 6 months to a year ago, what was there. There still is the issue of the overload trucks and being able to catch them.
So if we increase the load and we have overloads slip through, that would be even worse on the bridge than keeping the reduced load now and having a couple slip through, but not as much overloaded as we would expect potentially if we raise the load back up. Is that not right?
That's correct. The higher loads, you're going to have a little more wear and tear on the bridge.
Now, from one, there's a lot of things to consider here, and I'd be very interested. Frankly, I don't think we ought to do too much until we see what ODOT's going to do to us. We could be just throwing money away. Hopefully not, but
As part of that same information gathering, I'd like to talk to the businesses most impacted, which we've obviously done, and do that some more. What percentage of their traffic will 36 tons take care of? If it's 5% and all of the rest are 40, I want to know it. Or if it's 95, I'd also like to know it as part of the same discussion.
yeah, I think that's a great one. And then if somehow we could tie in at that heavier load, they've got to pay attention to speed on the bridge. If they just zip across, they're gonna tear it up. If I'm correct, John.
So when should we expect to hear some more of this?
Well, I guess if the board agrees, then I can submit this information to ODOT. Michael, if you want me to coordinate that, or
Well,
if you want to come from you.
let's talk later about that. But yeah, it could come from either one of us.
But I would agree that we submit the information, ask for a follow-up meeting, and then have that. And I would expect, and like perhaps Michael and myself, and John, along with ODOT counterparts, to be a part of that meeting, so we can kind of talk through what the issues and implications of their decisions are.
It would also be helpful that when you bring back your results to the commission, if you would get a schedule from ODOT of when could they perform this analysis and when would they have such a report available. I'm wondering if they hold off until they do the 2022 ODOT bridge inspection, how would that fold into this thing? I don't know.
Yeah, they shouldn't wait on that. We would want to try to get them to act on it as quickly as possible, and for the board to impress upon them the importance of this to your clients and the local communities, to get moving on that. And so and then we have to figure out what coordination do we need between BDI's extracting information out of their models to ODOT if ODOT is going to redo the rating, and how do we make that happen quickly?
Yeah, from a personal point of view, I am concerned. I'm interested in raising the weight limit back up on the bridge, and I understand the benefits of that. But at the same time, if we could, I'd really like to understand what it's doing to our bridge. We got to get at least 8 more years out of it. Okay, so let's not do something quick that's going to make a few people happy, but really puts that length of service into risk.
Okay. Is that enough for staff to move forward and we'll hear about this as soon as possible again?
Manny, could I add one comment? I just want to applaud Mark for, he's the one that saw the load rating analysis and reviewed it and felt that there were some, if with live load testing, that we could probably prove up some of those points that were allegedly deficient. So thanks, Mark, for doing that. It's really given the commission some options to look at that I don't think without your expertise, we wouldn't have been able to see. So thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Greg is going to host an airport work session for us.
Good evening, commissioners. That's correct. The goal this evening is to essentially continue the dialogue that we started in fall planning. Staff noted a couple action items during fall planning that was provided back to the commission. And this is, again, just the intention of providing a little bit of information and hopefully receive some guidance from the commission on how you best like staff to proceed. Without going into some of the details, I'll just run through it rather quickly, but some of it, again, is just background information that we can discuss at any point. But if you see anything that I might skip over, please call attention to it and we can dial in on it. Starting with the, essentially, here's our number 7 item, is a scheduled work session. Number 1 on it is key terms, ground lease. That discussion has been ongoing, and this was really there's quite a few terms in the packet that's I felt it just would be best to give an explanation of why those things might be included in a lease in some future form. I'm skipping right on to number 2 and number 3 are rather similar in that the theme is more about a survey. There was a note in fall planning to conduct a survey of our community. And it's just to point out that in 2020, there was a survey that was distributed and it was part of our strategic business plan. Just wanted to provide that for the commission and also assess whether that's sufficient, whether we need to develop an additional survey and just get some feedback on that. I trust you had a chance to scan over it. The results were not provided, but they can be provided. The packet was already pretty big. And so felt that it was nice to streamline. Happy to provide those results moving forward. But did the commission feel that it was necessary, or it is necessary, to develop and distribute an additional survey specific to the airport? Or did the 2020 questionnaire, does that feel sufficient? I guess that was a question, just wondering whether you'd like staff to work another survey, or whether that one from 2020 is still adequate.
Do any commissioners have a comment on that at all?
I'll take the lead, Commissioner Strike. I'll take a lead on that. Greg, I think the 2021 survey is more than adequate. It's current. It addressed a lot of issues, main thing, noise. So I think it's more than adequate to utilize that survey.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 4. We're still in a community outreach mindset, and the discussion topic was to have a community meeting. Is that still something that the commission would like to conduct, or would like staff to schedule and conduct, specific for the airport?
Great, Commissioner Strike. Can you go ahead and kind of give us an overview of what you try to accomplish from that community meeting? What bullet points you'd like to address?
Well, to be quite honest, these action items were taken from fall planning. And so I think staff is requesting from the commission what those key points should be. And so I would take that direction from the commission.
Because we do have, the airport advisory meeting is a public meeting. They can join those meetings and have input, and their voice can be heard.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Commissioner Strike on that one. We created the Airport Advisory Committee for just that purpose.
Okay, and all apologies if some of these things seem mundane, but I just think it's beneficial to run them through. They were action items or points. And so let's move on. Number 5 and number 6 are very similar in the concept of private partnerships and development at the airport. And we'll just skip right on down to the commercial hangar. So staff recently received floor plans and some rough magnitude costs from the architects, and started to work pro formas and financial models to see if it's feasible and how it would work out. It's I have to say, well, I would say that the 4% return has been the datum, if you will, to seek out a way to accomplish that. There are so many variables that it needed some sort of a theme or something to shoot for, shall we say. Staff found it very difficult to achieve that in a realistic scenario without heavily upfront cost or heavily out-of-pocket investment by the port. We continue to search for private partnership opportunities, other grants, other opportunities to facilitate this development. But currently, the only way that staff was able to accomplish a 4% return was if the port initiated with 40% of that. And yeah, Jen, if you don't mind scrolling down, with a 40% investment. So theoretically, the port would need to throw down about 1.2, 1.3 million on the onset. Staff is not suggesting that that is a positive alternative, or it's not a recommended alternative, but I just wanted to show the possibility if given what the port was willing to invest early on. I didn't include all of the financial models because I felt like it would get a little long-winded. I'm more than happy to share it. It works pretty well. I've got it set up. There's a front page where you can just drop your percentage points. You can drop in your funding, and it basically aggregates your costs. One thing that was of keynote is I did keep the hangar rental lease rate at $1. I felt like that was a little aggressive, being that current lease rates per square foot are not above $1 that we have now, but it needed some sort of a regulating cost factor.
Excuse me, as part of this calculation, did you consider a percentage, it doesn't matter what percentage, of private money that might be available here?
Well, so 500,000 is what we currently have available, whether that all goes to the airport or if part of it goes to Anchorway and First Street. But without any other grants currently available, it was tough to plug in those numbers. And so that's where staff is seeking additional grant fundage or any other financing opportunities.
Where a grant would be public money, I'm talking about private money.
Oh, well, no. So I think that's the next step, is to, first of all, to vet whether the port could do it in-house was the goal. And so I think the next steps moving out of this is seeking what type of partnerships with private money. Staff is still trying to vet grant money and see if we can accomplish this in-house, but it's seemingly a steep hill to climb.
Okay.
And then secondly, the T hangars. This is more of a time frame to wrap our heads around when future T hangar construction might happen. And the ground lease was part of the conversations, and so that subject ties into this. But essentially, there's just a few locations in the ALP that note where future hangars might be constructed. A couple of those have some serious logistic difficulties or considerations, if you will. One particular spot seems to be the most likely. And so looking at ways to achieve access to that, we've included funding requests in the FAA CIP program for those projects. Because of the availability of funds, they won't be available until 24 and 25, 2024 for design and 2025 for construction. So basically what that's saying is we're probably not going to be in a position to ground lease or consider ground lease or even build our own T hangars until post 2025, simply due to the necessity to have additional apron pavement put down for access. At the same time, the consideration, and there has not been a developer that's expressed interest to take it all on, but at least to vet whether it's possible to have a private developer pay for that improvement for the infrastructure, the pavement, and the T-hangers. Obviously, that they would then lease so they can amortize their investment. But this, again, is more just a continuation of the discussion. Wanted to provide where things are at and just keep the commission abreast to progress, if you will.
Perfect. So is that a discussion that we should have fairly soon? It feels like it. To what level, if at all, we're interested in pursuing some private money in advance of 25 for that development? And I'd be very interested in other commissioners' thoughts on this. I'd love to start with Commissioner Strike on the potential of building T-hangers and how we do so, or how we want to approach doing so.
Thanks, Commissioner Shepard. Gregor, let's start out with ground leases. One of the things I've experienced over the last 20 years is that we have a tendency of having a problem to enforce an inspection before we get the property back. Let's say in a 20, 30-year lease, we've had a problem with the building being not kept up to certain standards, and we haven't enforced it, and we receive something back that is not to the standard that we thought it would be, and our investment is deteriorated. How do you see writing that into a ground lease now moving forward, that we can be reassured as a commission that we're going to get the inspections done in a timely manner, and the leasee will understand that he or she has to improve the building to certain standards in order to maintain occupancy? How do we address that, Greg?
Yeah, you can have an O&M or operations and maintenance clause in the lease, which specifies a necessity for regular inspections, regular upgrades. It's also, there can be a requirement where any improvements that are done need to be first vetted by the port, need to be submitted, reviewed, and then approved prior to any kind of construction or any improvements that might take place.
So how do you write that in a contract, Greg, that as a person who leases the building, my standards may be lower than your standards, you being the port? How do we address that?
Yeah, well, I think part of it would be, we would need to develop a baseline. We do have an ordinance, ordinance 23 for the airport, but it could be plussed up to include architectural design features. It would require the ports to develop those standards to a greater degree, but they could be developed and it could be included in some future ground lease.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a really important point to point out and address, Greg, because it's always been a problem for us. It's something you want to get, we'll do it later, or it won't be a problem. I know the owner, he's a good guy, he'll do a good job. No, we can't do that. We got to have every 5 year, every 3-year window that we go in there. We have the right to go in there and maintain a certain standard, because that asset's going to be ours at one point. And that's the whole agreement of the ground lease, is that their capital investment is less going into it front. And we don't want it to inherit, like we have in the past, an asset that's been devalued.
I absolutely agree.
Thanks, Greg.
That would conclude my brief. I'm happy to still field questions if the commission would like. Yes, sir. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I like what you're doing, and I agree with what Obi said as far as, working through the specs and thinking out front before we go do a bunch of, ground leases and get ourselves positioned correctly. I'm also wondering that maybe we ought to look at, kind of step back, look holistically at the airport. And over the next 5 years, 8 years, whatever the number it is, we need to lay out a realistic funding plan that the port needs to provide capital. And you mix the capital with grants, with ground leases, with PPP. as a mixture, but we need to have a pot of development money to get where we want to get at the airport. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't kind of step back and say, hey, we want to have a program that looks like this in 8 years out at the airport. And to get there, we're going to need, I'm going to pick a number, $20 million that we've got to come up with. And we need probably another $15, $20 million of other money to do what we need to do. And once we figure what we want forecast wise, then we start looking at a budget for the next 5 years and making sure that we're filling those coffers to create that bucket of money that we need to go develop. And I think we can still do it now, but we can't wait too long. Because as everybody knows, that the bridge is going away.
Should that also include an idea of, I mean, there's already been over the course, even the last 5 years, I couldn't even count the number of staff hours that have gone into the improvements that have gone out there. Now we're ready, or getting close to ready to, what do we want physically there? Commercial hangar, yes. Do we want T hangars? Do we want some kind of pick your building? Do we want a new FBO building? Do we want all these things? I'd like that to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Then how do we get there as part of that planning discussion? Where's the grant money? Does it make sense to wait to see if we can get some grant money in 24 instead of private money? Because maybe that is a better lease once we get there for the port. That all needs to be part of it. But I'd like to see that. Here's what we want it to look like in 10 years. Here's how much money it takes. Here's where it might come from. And I mean, just like anything, when this bridge goes away, it's probably going to be a combination of all these things. So back to what Commissioner Strike said, yeah, that planning, I think there's a lot of different avenues. I think the private money's there now. Will it be in 5 years? I don't know. It is there now. The grant money might be there also, or more of it. So I agree with both of you.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah,
Chris,
staff notes it.
add to that one.
So one last.
What do you need from us? Please.
Yeah, what I was kind of thinking on the fly here, maybe we take this back to the working committee that says we want to develop a 5-year plan. And you start out with aspirational, what do we want the airport to look like in 5 years? And then how much money is it going to take to get there? And if you assume a mixture to start out with, port financed, grant financed, ground lease financed, and maybe even a little bit of a P3. And you start out that way. And then as time goes on, you start moving it around a little bit when reality hits. But you're starting with a top level plan, an aspirational plan, but it's relatively near term. And part of that plan is for Greg to get all of these procedures written and tightened down so we can go out and we feel comfortable with ground leases. And we're not going to get, worn out product at the end of a lease.
Greg, does that make some sense as far as moving forward? I mean, this is not us talking around this conversation at all. I think everybody wants to see development. Everybody wants to see us moving forward. We've already talked about the commercial hangar. The different ideas of how to do that are going to be really important from you guys soon. Does this make sense? Is just getting it? Here's what we want to get to together.
Yeah, I mean, I think the underlying theme is to have it self-sufficient. I think first and foremost is to make sure that the airport is not relying upon subsidies. And so how to combine that with a vision for the airport, I think it's important. You have to have some sort of a goal that you're going after. But so I think that they're two, but they're in tandem, because you could have a goal, but if it isn't affordable, then you're kind of wasting time. And so, yeah, I think reviewing the 10-year model, and when Fred refines it, I think we'll give some indication on what the assumptions are moving forward as finances, and then bouncing that back to looking at these exercises we're going through currently of looking at the feasibility in-house. And then if that's not possible, what does it mean to incrementally move outside in other directions with other grants, with other types of loans or private funding? To me, that seems like the best approach, I would assume. But I think a vision for what the airport should be would help significantly, because then everyone is marching to the same spot.
Could I add to what Greg just said? Just remind the commissioners that we just completed a 5-year strategic business plan that lays out for 5 years the specific capital improvements and the objectives, and it defines the vision. And remember that we're limited in terms of funding up there by the annual grant from the FAA. So that provides a certain amount of money each year, and there's opportunities to obtain additional funding, but those are always for capital improvements that are related to the aviation. They're not for private side improvements. So we know the picture for funding. We know we've defined to the FAA what our targets are, what the projects are that we are priorities, and they have committed to, or at least they have on their list of the expenditures that would be required. So I think primarily what we're talking about here is a specific number of sites that aren't directly related to the airfield operations, but are related to it. And there's a commercial hangar. There's a second commercial hangar pad site on the north ramp. There's the T hangar block in the ALP that's connected to the taxiway. And there's the area around the FBO. That's pretty much everything that we're talking about in terms of vertical construction. So there's a lot to work with. In other words, we've already done a lot of work, and the question is, does the commission want to tweak it, modify it, clarify certain things, and augment the kind of program or strategy for financing the vertical construction?
I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
What do you need from us to make that happen?
I think at this point, again, reviewing that financial model, the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan, I think coming back to the commission, and maybe we have a special session and we roll up our sleeves and actually consider what the vision is. What do we want it to be and look like? I know this exercise has been repeated over times, and maybe it's just a refresher of what has been approved previously. And again, as Michael said, what needs to tweak, because that will ultimately help. It'll help shape the actions to get there. And again, then that gives me the guidance to look at how we can do it in-house. And if we can't do it in-house, how do we accomplish it through partnerships?
I concur.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Thank you for your work on that. Executive Director's report.
Thanks, commissioners. Just highlighting a few things as always. We will be able to announce the new CFO's name at the March 1st meeting. And I just wanted to point out a big thank you to Fred. He's retired, but he's continuing to help us under contract. And I just very much appreciate that, because he's able to provide this connectivity between his work before he retired and the new CFO coming on board. To point out, I'm on vacation for those 2 weeks coming up starting next Monday. So Genevieve Scholl, Deputy Executive Director, will be stepping in as acting ED and will provide the leadership for the next meeting and the packet preparation and be part of that meeting. The next one is, of course, a joint session with the Port of Cascade Locks. We've done this twice in my tenure here, the last time probably 4 years ago now. But it's always a good opportunity to share ideas and especially get to know each commission gets to know each other. A lot of us here participated in bits and pieces of the SDAO conference. I would ask any commissioner that was able to participate or in any of those sessions to let Genevieve know, because to the extent we participate, to the extent we get credit in a reduction in our insurance bill. Question about return to in-person meetings. The office or indoor mask requirement is in place, but we could go back to in-person meetings if the commission felt comfortable. Really, the next decision point would be the March 1st meeting. So the question is, of course, to the Port of Cascade Locks, would they be interested in meeting in person, albeit with masks on? So that would be sort of a joint decision. But beyond that, when we get into the second meeting in March, I think the question is to this commission and frankly to staff, are we comfortable meeting in person again and starting up in the commission room here? So I'll pose that question now, and if any commissioners have feedback, I'd appreciate it.
Michael, some members of staff or members of the commission may have concerns they don't want to voice in a public meeting. Would it be, how about commissioners, if you would get back to me when you can over the next week on that, and staff, if you could get back to Michael, that way, if there are any concerns or any comments that need to be made, we don't have to do it over in an open session.
Yeah, very good point.
But I'd appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Daryl's pointed out, it's not in my report, but there's been several break-ins in the marina, both boathouses and vessels. That's a big concern that has occurred over the years occasionally, but this was several at one time. And so police reports have been filed, and we're attempting to monitor that situation better. And we're in the transition point, or will be, to a new nighttime security officer. And it could be, and likely will be, that there'll be some additional attention to the marina by that new contractor. Monthly activity report from TAC Aero is provided, and as well as AEC meeting minutes. I did not attend, but I think the good summary is in your packet. And then finally, just point out, it's in the report, but John's been doing some really good work meeting with Lumen, as Lumen's responsibility is to resolve that wire issue in the catenaries above the lift span. John is working with them and preparing to review their schedule and plan to make that repair. John, do you have any idea of when that might be occurring, ballpark?
They had a meeting after I gave them a little push. They had a meeting today, and I should be getting a briefing back from that tomorrow. And I will know. I think we're probably roughly in the 2-week time frame.
Oh, really? So that'll be a similar helicopter-driven operation.
It will be exactly the same.
Will require some closures, but well, one closure for the operation. So they would have to do that in daylight hours, so there could be some traffic impacts there. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks. That's my report.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, we have several commissioner committee reports. I'll go first because that's A. Daryl and I met with the Marina Committee last week, or this week? It was last week, and had a good meeting. As you'd expect, there was a lot of discussion about rate increases, discussion about any concerns they have. It was actually a very productive meeting. Some great ideas from them. Michael mentioned the thefts and break-ins going on down there. Lately, there's been a couple. The Marina Committee requested, and I concurred, we asked Daryl to look into security cameras down there, as we have at the airport. So hopefully she'll be able to do that soon, and we can get back to them. But all in all, a very good meeting, and Daryl did such good work that I really didn't have to do much besides listen. So thank you for that. Is there anything that you wanted to add that I forgot?
I just wanted to say I thought Commissioner Shepard did a great job. The Marina Committee is a really amazing group, but tough crowd when they're crabby. And he handled it really well and listened to their concerns and was very open to their ideas. And I thought it was a really great meeting, and I appreciated your support with that. So it was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Garing isn't here at the moment. Is there anything from Waterfront Committee to report?
Oh, pick me.
I am picking you. Go right ahead.
All right. That was our Waterfront Committee meeting. I thought was really successful as well. Genevieve helped me out a ton, and it was really nice having Commissioner Garing there. I'll send some very detailed notes for some light reading for the next meeting, but the resounding things that we heard were all members felt it was a priority for the port to get back to trash can service and opening restrooms in all the areas that we have them, that it's really an impact on all user groups. And that was kind of a resounding thing that we heard. The other, another thing was the signage at Nichols Basin, and great concerns from all the different users as far as the drop-offs and kids and families, and really for the port to focus on some signage at the north end of Nichols and then at Frog Beach as well. I did have one of the committee members point out something glaring that I missed, was that we didn't have anyone in our committee representing families. So we have all these different user groups, but the family user group is a big one. And I appreciated that being pointed out. So Mark Hickok from Parks and Rec took that on. So there was just lots of discussion about kiters, safety, watching out for families and kids, better signage, and possible organized cleanups out on the sandbar, and then lots of requests for dredging at the mouth of Nichols Basin, which is a whole nother thing. But it was a great group with good feedback that we will be able to use going into the future for budget planning, policy, all kinds of upcoming meetings. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. By state working group, Commissioner Fox.
Yeah. I'm going to ask Kevin to jump in if I missed something here, but I think we had an excellent meeting yesterday. We had a legislative update, and progress is going really well in both state of Washington as well as Oregon. I think we're going to have some legislation in place here pretty quick, definitely this summer, where we can stand up this bi-state bridge replacement organization. It's moving along very well. Lots of good support on both sides. There's a lot of good support on cross-fertilization between Washington to Oregon and Oregon to Washington. It's going, I think, incredibly well. We're also hearing that there's a possibility, nothing's guaranteed until you get the check in the bank and it's cleared, but there's efforts underway under Washington side to advance fund about $75 million for the new bridge. And we're pushing hard on Oregon to cut loose $20 million or so from Oregon by this summer as well. Again, no guarantees, but everything that I'm hearing is very positive. Do you have anything to add on that one, Kevin?
Well, just as we were starting the meeting this evening, I did get a text from Brad Boswell, our government affairs liaison in Olympia, and he texted that the Senate, the Washington State Senate, is currently running that transportation bill tonight. And that's the one with the $75 million call out. So a lot of politics behind that. And so the big question is whether that will be bipartisan in nature. And so something to keep an eye on as that moves forward. If I could also thank you, Commissioner Fox, for the letters of advocacy and support for not just the $20 million, but also for the Bridge Authority legislation on the Oregon side. We've gotten letters directed to the OTC from the city, port, and county of Hood River, Friends of the Columbia Gorge, Southwest Washington RTC, Providence Memorial, One Gorge. Thank you, Genevieve, for that. The Bi-State Working Group. And Bob Sharkey with Hood River Rotary and I have been exchanging emails tonight. I'm going to be presenting to the Rotary on Thursday, but the OTC has a comment portal where anybody can give comment to the OTC, and Bob has agreed to submit that to the Rotary membership either tonight or tomorrow. So that's another great way to just, you know, bomb the OTC with comments and letters. And so it's really been great to see everybody step up for this.
It is really nice to see the local community just come forward and what else can we do kind of a thing. And I've reached out, actually went and talked to these people and not only on this particular letter, but the previous one, and overwhelming support. Go faster, don't go slower, hurry it up. So it's good. Others, Kevin?
I don't think so. I made some
Okay.
comments in my report that I don't need to relay now. I just wanted to give that updated report from Mr. Boswell.
Yeah, one that I do want to touch on, probably two more. One is Jen Mayer from Concept Generation LLC visited with us yesterday, and she's one of the people that participated in a presentation about a year ago to the Bi-State Working Group on P3. And we asked her to come back. She was gracious enough to spend half an hour, 40 minutes with us. We learned a lot more about P3, and the idea was, when do you pull the trigger? You know, when is it time to say, yeah, we're going P3, or no, we're too late, or what are those conditions that you want to consider when making that decision? And it didn't give us the answers, but it kind of told us we're on the right path, and the decision date appears to be reasonable to where we're going. We're going to have a lot more discussions on this once we get the management contract in place. But it felt pretty good that she supported our general approach that we're using. It's not saying that we're locking ourselves out from going to a P3. So it gave us some more confidence that we're going in the right way. The last one I want to talk about a little bit, and maybe Kevin, give us a quick brief.
Yeah.
Is the RBMC contract. How close are we to hitting the street with that?
Yeah, so I did get comments this weekend from Bill Oley. I have an appointment with ODOT procurement officer on Thursday. So making all the changes to that Bill Oley suggested and other comments. I think you've seen versions of that, Commissioner, as has Commissioner Anderson from Clickitat County. So hoping to get that to ODOT by Thursday, Friday of this week, get the comments back from ODOT early next week. And, you know, I'm thinking, I think really close after that. I think we'll have a document that's in good condition to share with the working group or the Port Commission. I do think that document needs to be formally reviewed and approved before it hits the street.
I agree.
So whether that's March 1st or a special meeting in advance of that is to be seen, but it's coming up soon.
Yeah, I'm going to be ready that we can call a special Bi-State Working Group session between now and the next one, so we can go through this, so we're not holding it up, and then it can go right into this meeting.
Perfect.
So a lot going on with the bridge, and I sense the momentum is on the upswing. So we're getting ready to giddy up.
Thank you both.
End of report.
All right, thank you. One thing to add, as Kevin mentioned, he is speaking Thursday at the Rotary Club. Historically, when we were in person, if somebody wanted to come to that, you have to find a member and be a guest. It's on Zoom now. I don't know if you can just do what you want. Any commissioner that wants to go, let me know and I'll make sure you are invited. Any staff member, you guys take care of that. I don't know what staffing and situation there looks like. So who's available. So you guys take care of it there. But any commissioner, please let me know. I'd be happy to get you on that call. Okay, urban renewal. Who do I ask about that one?
That's me. Excuse me. Not much to report. They just appointed Clint Harris to officially be a part of the Urban Renewal Committee. And that was really it. So easy.
Commissioner Chapman, quick question. Do you anticipate any further discussion anytime at some future meeting about the waterfront urban renewal district? Is that on the radar anywhere?
It was mentioned, I want to say like in December, and no conversations have happened since, but they've also canceled several meetings since then. I can happily follow up on that because I think it's important. Yeah, so I can reach out.
I think the end date for that district is coming up in a couple of years. And the Urban Renewal Agency has to decide about the termination of the downtown waterfront district, which restores a lot of property back on the tax rolls for the increment is restored. And this becomes a really important question as we look ahead to the next few years of the waterfront and the possibility of utilizing tax increment funding, which we've done before. And don't forget, we've on several occasions the port has financed a project and then tax increment has paid us back through a loan agreement. So I think we need to make sure that we take advantage of opportunities that might still be there for the remainder of the district.
Agree. I'll follow up.
Who's Energy Council?
Yeah, that's me. I'll take that one. 2 items. Number 1, Marla Harvey, who's kind of the coordinator for the Energy Council, is driving an annual work plan. And draft is coming close. I believe, Michael, you've received a request to address the port with the plan. So they educate the rest of the commission on what the plan is for this next year. And I can't remember, is that next meeting or the meeting after?
We targeted March 15th for that.
Yeah, I think you're right. So anyway, as far as the port goes, there's only one that made it onto the list, and that's the bridge. And it's not a real strong commitment. It's just we will consider trying to make it as green as possible with solar and wind to cover the lighting type loads on the bridge. And I said that we probably won't be ready for any kind of real hard discussion on that until 2023 sometime in the design phase. So they were fine with that. Lastly, I owe Commissioner Chapman 2 future draft choices. I talked her into doing a kind of a trade here, a one-way trade. She's going to take over sponsorship of the Energy Council for me because I'm getting more and more tied up with this new bridge. And as legislation comes into play and we start getting some money and we get the management contract in place, I can just see more and more involvement in that. So thank you very much, Christy. I owe you 2 future draft choices. End of report.
I like to call it being voluntold.
Thank you. There's no Visit Hood River. I know there's some discussion about that Visit Hood River update. That meeting is tomorrow, if I understand correctly. Okay. Then that will move us along to our sole action item this evening.
Yeah, Commissioners, this is a small but really important item. Back in, I think, about 2018, we received a letter from the Yakama Nation indicating that the Yakama Nation, through the Treaty of 1855, had perpetual rights to cross the bridge and other public ways without a fee or a toll. We did the appropriate research and verified that yes, that was in fact correct, and thereafter entered into a first informal and then a formal toll waiver policy for the Yakama Nation. The Nez Perce also, although less so, they frequent this reach of the river and cross the bridge, although more seasonally because of the fish runs. And they indicated that they also wish to assert their right, and we have accommodated them as we should informally. And what we spoke to the Nez Perce about is a more formal recognition of our responsibility to allow for this toll-free crossing. So we've allowed Nez Perce members to cross for about a year and a half now, but this is the formal recognition of our obligation and of their treaty rights. And in some ways, it doesn't really need to be done, but in some ways it should, because this is, I think the port is acknowledging this, and it rests and will reside as a policy approved by the commission, and therefore for future commissions and future staff, they should also realize what our responsibility is and recognize it. The one change to this is the one I pointed out at the top of the meeting. There's a typo, and this should be approved without the second "shall not be subject to a toll" that's contained in the acknowledgement. So staff recommends your approval.
Does anyone have a question for Michael on this? Then I'd entertain a motion.
President Shepherd, I'll go ahead and make a motion. Commissioner Strike, approve acknowledgement of the Nez Perce treaty rights in the statement of the policy regarding non-revenue passage of the Nez Perce tribal members, employees crossing the Hood River White Salmon Interstate Bridge, with the typo corrected.
Chapman, second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please.
Strike, aye.
Fox, aye.
Shepherd is aye as well. Motion will pass. Thank you. Confirmation of directives. Was there anything outside of airport, which I don't know if there's any directives there, but was there anything else we need to know?
Wasn't there for the load ratings, the rating analysis on the bridge that Michael and Mark Libby were going to work on getting together with ODOT and figuring out a plan for that, for the implications of the weights? That was a directive, wasn't it?
Yep, it was. Thank you.
Okay.
And there was a second part to that, if you were getting to it, which is to reach out to the trucking companies or packing houses and others that use the bridge and get their input.
Okay. Think that covers that. Commission call, Commissioner, anything?
Fox, no.
Mr. Strike, no.
Chapman, no.
Neither do I. All right. Got through that pretty well. Thank you, staff, for your hard work. With that, we will recess regular session and enter into executive session under ORS 1926602E, real estate negotiations 1926602F, to consider information or records are exempt from disclosure by law, 1923452, trade secrets, and 192.6602I, executive